The headlines out of Iran are not just triggering policy debates, they're triggering relationship tests at work, at family dinners, in group texts. People aren't just discussing strategy, they're judging each other's motives, questioning character, drawing moral lines in what feels like permanent ink. And here's the danger. Yes, what happens overseas matters, but what also matters is what happens between us at home. Because if every issue becomes a loyalty test, we don't just lose arguments, we lose trust. And when we lose trust, we lose relationships we still need 5, 10, 20 years from now. So I want to give you a simple model sparked by what's happening in Iran, but you can use for any controversial issue without burning down relationships you'll rely on for the rest of your life. Welcome to the Leadership Career Accelerator, where we help aspiring leaders like you build executive presence, influence with impact, and get recognized and promoted. I am longtime CEO Barry Molen. In a minute, I'm going to give you a 4-part strategy. But first, let's talk about why these conversations go sideways so fast. When the topic is something controversial, like war with Iran, people hold multiple fears at once. Some are focused on Iran's support for militant groups and the regional instability that comes with it. Some are focused on nuclear ambitions and whether negotiations have worked. Others worry the U.S. is becoming the aggressor or that regime change is the real intent. Others believe domestic U.S. politics are distorting motives and trust is gone. And here's the key. People are often conflicted. They can believe Iran is dangerous and believe war creates blowback. Both can be true. But the moment the conversation becomes good people think like this and bad people think like that, you lose the ability to think together. So let me give you a simple way to enter the conversation that sets a totally different tone. Here's a script you can use. Hey, I want to talk about what's happening with Iran, but I want to do it in a way that strengthens our relationship, not weakens it. This is a tough issue, and I honestly think there's a lot of gray here. Before we trade opinions, can we try something? Let's agree it's complex, then lay out what we think we know and where we heard it, and also be honest about what our gut is reacting to. I'm not looking to win. I'm looking to understand how you see it and share how I see it, without either of us turning the other into a villain. This opener does 3 things. It sets intent, that is, relationship over victory. It signals humility. The issue is gray, not black and white. And it proposes a structure so the conversation doesn't spiral. Okay, now that we know how to start, here's the 4-part strategy that keeps you in control once emotions show up. Step 1 is name the complexity. Say something like, this is one of those issues where smart people land in different places. You can say, there are real risks no matter what we do. Or you can say, I don't think the answer is perfectly clean. Let me give you a workplace version. Picture a Monday morning staff meeting. Someone makes an offhand comment. Trump's bombing Iran just to distract from his domestic problems. And you can feel the room tighten. Half the room nods. The other half goes quiet. Here's a leadership move in that moment. Instead of debating the claim, say, can we agree this is a complex issue and emotions run high? There are legitimate concerns on multiple sides, and I don't want us to turn this into a character-building contest. That one sentence does something powerful. It creates room to breathe. We just made the room for nuance. Now let's move to the step that stops the conversation from becoming my reality versus yours. Step 2 is to separate facts from interpretations and predictions. You can ask, what do we actually know versus what are we assuming? Where did we hear that? How confident are we? What information would change our minds? Let me give you an example from a family dinner. You're at dinner and someone says, Iran has been funding terrorists forever. We have to hit them hard. Okay, now that hit them hard part is kind of a quote that Donald Trump would say. So instead of reacting, say, okay, before we jump into hit them hard, can we list what we know for sure, what we think is true, and what we're assuming? Then you put things in buckets. You can talk about the verified or widely accepted points. You can talk about interpretations. This will stop them. This will escalate. You can talk about motive guesses. This is a distraction, or this is just politics. You can talk about the unknowns. What's the end game? What's the timeline? What are the next moves? The goal isn't to win the facts. The goal is to build a shared map. What do we know and what do we not know? We just talked about facts and assumptions. Now let's move on to the part most people skip. And when they skip it, the conversation turns into accusations. So it's really important to do this next part. Name your feelings and values explicitly. Try this. Here's what my gut reacts to. The value I'm trying to protect is, my biggest fear is. So let me give you an example from, say, a group of friends that are texting. You know the thread. Someone posts an article. Someone posts a meme. And suddenly it's World War III in the group chat. One friend says, the US is the aggressor. This is imperialism. Another says, if Iran gets nukes, that's catastrophic. So anything is justified. Here's the move. You don't argue first. You translate values. You say, I hear two different values here. One is restraint and sovereignty, don't repeat history. And the other is prevention, don't allow a nuclear threat. That's why this is hard. That statement doesn't solve it, but it makes people feel understood, and it lowers the temperature. And here's a key line you can use in any conversation. Feelings are valid signals. They're not automatically valid conclusions. So we just put the human side on the table, values and fears. Now we move to the step that protects relationships when you still don't agree. You want to commit to an evolving conversation. The fourth part is, don't force a verdict today. Commit to an evolving conversation. You can say, let's keep talking as facts change. You can say, if new evidence changes my view, I want to be open to that. Or, let's choose a few things we'll watch for. So here's a practical example. For Iran, that might mean escalation or retaliation patterns. It could mean verification of key claims as more information emerges, or whether stated goals match actual outcomes. This keeps you out of the trap of needing certainty today. So we just talked about the 4 parts of the model. Now let's make it even more practical. Here are 6 common statements you'll hear about Iran and how to respond without torching the relationship. So number 1 is, Iran funds terrorists. We have to hit them hard. You can say, hey, totally fair to be alarmed. Before we jump into hit them hard, can we map best case and worst case scenarios and what facts we're using to predict these outcomes? Number 2 is, Trump is only bombing Iran to distract from the Epstein files. You can say, I hear the distrust. Motives matter, and they're hard to prove in real time. What if we label that as a motive hypothesis and separate it from what we can verify about actions and outcomes? Then we can revisit motives as evidence emerges. The third is, the US is the aggressor. We shouldn't be doing regime change. You can say, hey, I get that. Can we clarify? Are we talking defense, deterrence, punishment, or regime change? Those are different debates with different moral boundaries. The next one is, negotiations never work. Only force stops them. You can say, I understand why you feel that way. What evidence would convince you diplomacy can work, even partially? And what evidence would convince you force isn't working? That's a better debate. All right, another thing somebody might say is, this will put Americans in danger everywhere around the world. Here's what you can say. That fear is real. Can we separate immediate risks from long-term risks and then talk about what actions actually reduce risk for Americans overseas? And lastly, if Iran gets nukes, that's catastrophic. So almost anything is justified. You can say, Hey, I understand the urgency. The question is what almost anything means. Can we name boundaries? What civilian harm is unacceptable? What escalation risk is unacceptable? That's where values intersect. We just made this practical with real responses. Now, let me show you how to end these conversations well, because endings determine whether you'll be able to talk again next week. Here's an idea for a closing script. Okay, I'm really glad we talked. I don't think we have to land in the same place today. And honestly, the situation is moving fast, so certainty is probably overrated right now. Here's what I'd like. Let's keep this as an ongoing conversation as new facts come in. And let's agree on a couple things we'll watch for so we're not just reacting to whatever shows up in our feeds. Most of all, I want you to know I respect you and I value being able to talk like this. Whatever we think about Iran, I don't want it to cost us the ability to stay connected. That ending protects the future. We just talked about how to end without burning bridges. Now let's pull out the leadership lesson underneath all of this. The four big leadership takeaways are: one, the relationship is the mission. If you win the argument but damage trust, you didn't lead, you just scored points. Two, structure beats intensity. When emotions rise, a framework keeps you out of the ditch. The third leadership lesson is nuance is strength, not weakness. If you can't hold complexity, you can't lead in complexity. And the final leadership lesson is certainty is often a shortcut to conflict. Curiosity and humility keep teams and families intact. And that brings us to the simple action step. If you want to be the kind of leader people trust, especially when stakes are high, practice this approach the next time a tough issue comes up, even now, like Iran. Use the start script, follow the 4 steps, end it in a way that protects the relationship. Well, that's the end of the episode. If this was helpful, visit barrymolen.com and let's bring this conversation into your organization. I would love to connect. I'm Barry Molen. See you soon.